Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rachel and today I'm going to share an update on how I've been planning so far in 2023 and flip through the January pages in both of the planners that I have been using consistently over the last month and a half. So if that sounds good, let's get right to it. So if you've been following my YouTube channel for a bit, you'll know that I was originally intending to go into 2023 with two planners, with two sort of main planners. The Hobonichi Weeks Mega, using this as my everyday carry, my personal planner, really capturing everything that I need to organize my personal life, and then using the Hobonichi Cousin for the daily pages mostly, using these as a day per page because I'm very much a daily planner, but then using the rest of the layouts available in the Cousin for memory keeping. Now, if you saw my Hobonichi Cousin setup video, which I will be sure to link in the description box, you'll know that I ended up setting up this Cousin basically as an everything planner. I was really trying to consolidate down from 2 books into 1 book. And then I also introduced this Passport Traveler's Notebook, basically as an on-the-go planner in lieu of the weeks, since the A5 Cousin is a bit too big for me to be carrying around everywhere. But I was really trying to make the Hobonichi Cousin my primary only main planner. I feel like I often have this romanticized idea about having 1 book. And I say romanticize because I think I romanticize it. I was a bullet journaler for many years before finding Hobonichis, and I loved having everything in one place. And I often want to get back to having everything in one place. But I think in lots of ways my planning needs have evolved and how I plan has evolved so much that it has become very difficult to get it down to 1 book, but I wanted to try, and so I set this up as essentially my main planner, planning to put the Hobonichi Weeks aside for the year. And that was how I used the Hobonichi Cousin for most of January. So you'll see as I flip through the Hobonichi Weeks pages, they're pretty sparse. I did some back planning, but I was really using this almost exclusively. And now that we're a couple weeks into February as I'm filming this, I am back in this 2-book system. I wasn't loving trying to cram everything into the Hobonichi Cousin, and here I am back in what I was originally intending to use when I filmed my 2023 planner lineup video, which I will also link in the description box below. So I'll flip through both of these books, and as I flip through, talk more a bit about why I felt like trying to fit everything into 1 notebook wasn't working for me, and also talk a bit about how I'm planning to use both of these books moving forward. So here I have the Hobonichi Cousin Avec. This is in a cover from VanDerSpek. This is the Janet Leather Black. I'll leave all the specs down in the description box below. But this cover, I love this cover. I have no desire to move out of it. I picked it up last November, and I have been using it ever since. It's super slim, but also feels like there's a lot of room in the pockets to store stuff I like to keep with me. And I love the 2 pen loops. I'm really enjoying this cover and not planning to move out of it for February. So in the pockets, I just got some functional stickers I use on a regular basis. I've also got some stamps, and our vaccine cards are back there, and just a couple of pieces for decoration. I don't really decorate the pockets very well, but I do like to use them for a functional purpose. And then in the back, I also have some stickers and a stencil that I use pretty regularly. And then flipping through, getting into the pages of the Hobonichi Cousin, not much has changed. In this first layout, in January, used this as my habit tracker. And I used it pretty consistently, so that I'm proud of. I had really fallen off habit tracking in 2022, and when I fall out of habit tracking, I fall out of being consistent with some of my habits, and so that I have been consistent with habit tracking, even though I still have a lot of work to do in terms of the habits I want to cultivate. I'm really proud of. And so that's how I used it in January. For February, I have moved habit tracking back into my Hobonichi weeks, and instead I was inspired by someone I found on Instagram. Her handle is Copeland Plans, and she was using this spread for 1 memory a day. And so I thought I would try that for February and see if I like it, and then see, you know, go from there. I was thinking I could also potentially like just write a full summary of the month here, sort of reflecting back on fun things we did, highlights, challenges of the month, things like that. I was also recently watching Ellie's video. I can't exactly remember her YouTube channel name, but her channel is great. I'll be sure to link her in the description box below, but she is using sort of a similar layout that's in the Take a Note planner, and she's drawing sort of highlights from the month. I don't have those type of artist skills, but I was thinking maybe I could put like a couple stickers and write down some things associated with highlights from the month. And so I'm still thinking about how I want to use this for the rest of the year, but I'm excited to play with it. And the habit tracking worked well for me, but I think the fundamental problem for me with keeping habit tracking here is that the Hobonichi cousin is big and I don't keep it with me all the time. And so I'm best with habit tracking when I'm habit tracking in the notebook that's always on me. And so that's why I've decided to move it into the weeks, because that planner is really with me almost all the time. This next page I'm using as a future log, and I don't have a ton of stuff coming up. Like I know dates, some dates, you know, for the last half of this year, but I've just written down a couple things that I wanted to remember, like the DC Pen Show. I want to make sure I put that in my calendar and buy a ticket when they become available. I'm really excited to check that out. And this work has been working really well for me as a future log. Although I do also keep future appointments and things that I would want to put in a future log in my Hobonichi weeks. And so this is sort of like an add-on, something else I can use to capture future appointments. And when I go to set up my Hobonichi cousin, the second for the second half of the year, the Avec set for July through December, I'll reference this as I'm setting that one up, and also or transfer anything that's here and not in my Hobonichi weeks, to make sure that this, like whatever I'm capturing here, I don't lose in some way. And so then turning to the January page, the monthlies in the Hobonichi cousin, I was trying to use this more for planning, and also memory keeping, because I love memory keeping in the Hobonichi cousin. Like when I'm sitting at my desk and have all of my stationery things available to play with, like my washi tapes, my stamps, I love opening up the Hobonichi cousin. And so I'm really trying to lean into the memory keeping function of it for me right now. And I was definitely doing that in January too, on top of planning. So here I was noting things like when I was trying to film some YouTube videos. I was also trying to note some memories by highlighting them here. We took a couple trips to local museums. And then here on the leftmost corner or leftmost column, I was documenting the media I was currently consuming. So what I was watching, what I was listening to, and what I was reading. I'm hoping I didn't set this up in the same way for February, and I'm regretting that. And so I really like having this here, and so I think I'm gonna try to do that moving forward. But that's January and my monthly spread. And then getting into the weekly pages. The weekly pages are really like my favorite part of the Hobonichi cousin. I've experimented multiple times with using astrology in lieu of the cousin, especially because like The Cousin, in terms of its functionality for me, is really grounded in the daily pages. And so I've thought a lot about like using just a blank notebook or the Stalogy, and I've tried that a bunch of times, but I always come back to the Cousin because of the weekly pages. I feel like the weekly pages just give me such a great overview of what's going on in our lives. And when I think about trying to like use this planner to document what's going on in our lives, the weekly pages are just so much more functional for me than daily pages. The daily pages ultimately get like really cluttered and in ways that are functional. Like I like having them open and writing anything down I need to write down. But then when I'm looking back, they don't seem as functional for figuring out what went on that day, but the weekly layouts do. So the way I use these in January was essentially at the beginning of the week, would put in any meetings I knew I had, things going on that week. And I use this, like I have this open and I use this to basically plan out my week. Like, when do I want to work out? What days am I going into DC? What's our dinner plans? Like this, the vertical layout is very functional for me as I'm actually thinking about planning. And then as the week goes on, I fill in all the gaps with things we actually did. And so this starts out pretty empty with just meetings or events or other things to note starting. Like that's how the week starts out, with those things on this page. And then I'm sort of filling in the gaps, like just a really rapid logging my day, writing down fun memories as they happen. And this is just so functional for me. I love flipping back through this, and it gives me such a clear sense of what the weeks look like and what our lives are looking like. And then in this left column, I've been playing with different layouts, and as I was really trying to lean into like using the Hobonichi Cousin both as a functional planner and as a memory keeper and as my essentially like one book, I was using this left column as a running to-do list of personal tasks that I needed to get done that week, but that weren't day specific. And that was not working for me. So for a long time, I had kept this running task list of personal to-dos in my Hobonichi weeks. So if I'm flipping to the current week in my Hobonichi weeks, this is what it looks like. And this is my running to-do list of like personal tasks. And when I try to put it here, I think the key reason that this doesn't work for me here is that when during the week, as I'm using this planner, I keep it open to the daily page. So I have it open here, which like the current day we're on, and this is telling me what I have to get done that day, both personal and work task, and then some notes. And this is really functional for me, just having keeping this open to that specific day and what I have going on. And I feel like I wasn't referencing this personal task list. Like I needed to be flipping back and forth more than I was. And it's just much more functional for me to have both of these books open on my desk, with this open to the daily page and this open to the week, with my running to-do list and kind of like a high level summary of what's going on that week. It seems small, both of these things are captured in here, but for whatever reason, it just wasn't I was not on top of various personal tasks in the way I needed to be in January. And I felt like in part that was because I didn't have a way to see both of those things constantly. And that really helps me, for whatever reason, stay on top of things. So that's one reason I've been using the Hobonichi weeks again. And then the other way I was using this leftmost column was kind of inspired both by the Passion Planner layout and other creators on YouTube I've seen, but I I have to think more, and I will link down whoever inspired this. But I have like a focus for the week, good things, just some fun or happy memories, like big highlights from the week. And then this is a KIV, stands for keep in view. These are just things they're not action items, but they're things that I don't want to forget about. So like I was waiting for confirmation that a return I sent in to J.Crew had been processed, and I didn't want to like forget that I hadn't got that confirmation email yet. So things like that. And then I also added a list here of random stuff we had to buy, and then a waiting on list, which is just packages I was waiting on. And these, as I've been thinking about how I want to use this layout for February, I am leaning more towards the sort of focus and good things, and I've moved the to buy and the waiting on into my Hobonichi weeks. Again, because I feel like these two things are more useful to me if I have them in my weeks, which is with me most of the time. So yeah, these are the last few weeks of January in my Hobonichi cousin. I really loved playing with different Tombow markers, trying to get them to sort of match the washi or whatever deco I was using. I really love how this week turned out. And then this is the last week of January and the first week of February. Moving into the daily pages. Okay, so the Hobonichi cousin comes with this blank page at the start of every month. And in January, I use this basically to outline my goal plan. This layout is inspired by the Cultivate What Matters power sheets. And I really like this layout for helping me think about what I need to be doing on a monthly and weekly basis to achieve my goals. I liked this here, but I have used the blank January page for different things over the years. And again, I think I realized that I prefer this layout in the Hobonichi weeks because I just wasn't flipping back to this to update this or even like have an eye on what it was I wanted to be doing. And so I felt like I wanted all of my trackers in one place and all of my collections in one place, which is how I've set up the Hobonichi weeks, and I'm more consistent with checking those trackers and collections. I think in large part, like, this experiment failed because my brain is so used to picking up different notebooks for different things, and my brain just wasn't like in the habit of picking up the cousin to check on my monthly goals. But I did like the way this turned out. Then I tipped in some vellum from Sterling Inks. This is her January collection. I subscribe to her sub box. It's a great set of stickers you get every month, and it feels like manageable in terms of like actually using them. And then how I was using the daily pages in January. So to get into how I was using them, I used the first couple of pages in January just for notes. And I use them for notes because those first few days in January, I wasn't working. And on days that I'm not working, I don't really need a day per page. Sometimes I do need, I do want a day per page, like if it's a particularly busy day or have a lot going on or just there's a lot on my mind, but I don't need it. And we were very much still in like vacation mode, so I didn't use it as a day per page. And instead I was taking notes on a variety of things. I saw this on Ashton Womack's YouTube channel. She is the owner of Virgo and Paper, a sticker shop, and I believe she sells other stuff now. I love her sticker shop. But she had this section for journal intentions, which I really loved. And so I added that here. Although these journal intentions no longer accurately reflect how I'm using the cousin. So yeah, I was just taking some notes, and then we get into like really how I've been using the daily pages in a functional way, which is I split the day in half, and here I have personal to-dos and just like a kind of high-level summary of what's going on, and then I have work to-dos on the right. And that really works for me well because personally, I need to see everything that I need to get done in one place, everything I need to get done for that day in one place, and have some high-level reminders of like what's going on that day on the same page. I will often close out of my Outlook calendar, which I use for work because I want to focus. But that means I need some other way to remind myself that like I have a meeting at 1 o'clock. You can't forget about that. Oops. And this really works for me functionally. So you'll see that a lot through these daily pages in January. On weekdays, this sort of 2-column approach with personal and work, and then like a high-level summary of the day has been really functional. And then in blank spaces, I will often just write notes. Sometimes I'll journal, like, you know, just a short journaling session reflecting on the day or a summary of the day. And then I've also been making more of an effort to add in pictures each week wherever there are blank spaces left. So yeah, you'll see a lot of the same layout in January. And I think that this, like, because this layout's so functional for me, the day per page with like these 3 sections, the Hobonichi Cousin becomes, I don't feel like I have enough space to make the Hobonichi Cousin my everything planner because I'm using up most daily pages for daily planning. On the weekends, I usually just use one page for the weekend with a running weekly to-do list, or a running to-do list for the weekend, and then 2 shorter places for each day of the week. Sometimes I use this for day-specific to-dos or events, and then here I was just journaling and instead included some pictures. We went to the Natural History Museum in DC with my son for the first time. He's 19 months and has been really into giraffes lately. He cannot quite say giraffes, but it's really cute hearing him try, and he had a great time that day. And so I just love being able to add in these memories here. But again, that also just sort of takes up space in a way that doesn't leave a lot for notes pages or brain dumps or other lists or other types of like things I might want to record on the daily pages, which together has left me wanting to go back into the Hobonichi weeks as my companion for the Hobonichi Cousin. Or my Hobonichi Cousin is a companion for the weeks. I don't know. In my brain, they just go together so well. And so I think of them as a pair that I love using together. And then here was a blank page that I used for just a brain dump. And I took some notes. I was rereading Atomic Habits by James Clear. I really enjoy that book, and it was helpful to reread it at the start of the year as I'm trying to work on cultivating some habits that are important to me. And then we get back into more regular daily pages, realizing that I did not check off a lot of things in January, and I want to go back because it bugs me, even if it's just to cross them out. And then here I was trying out, I don't know what I was trying out. I think I've gotten more creative with the Hobonichi Cousin, which is fun. Like my guess is here, I messed something up, and so I cut down a bunch of washi tape and glued it on so I could rewrite something over it. But it ended up looking so cluttered. I've never come back to this. And then I guess, like I spilled something here, I don't know. But what I was trying here was to have like a weekly plan. And then I also had this tracker. My husband and I were doing the 30-day yoga challenge from Yoga with Adrienne. And I ended up moving this into Hobonichi weeks because again, I felt like I wasn't coming back to this because my brain is just not trained. I don't know, to think about like trackers in the Hobonichi Cousin daily pages. I also think another reason having these types of trackers in the daily pages wasn't working for me was because like it feels so cluttered in some ways. Like when I turn back to this page, I couldn't remember why I flagged it. Like, was it for this list of routines, the 30-day yoga challenge? And maybe I could write that on a flag, but I feel like because I was trying to use the Hobonichi Cousins daily pages and the planner for everything, the daily pages were starting to feel cluttered to me in a way that just like the important things weren't catching my eye. And so my plan now is to continue using these daily pages in the same way, because this is working really well. And then in the blank pages, just do more memory keeping, taking reading notes, taking random notes. Like I was trying to figure out how many fountain pens should I have inked at any one time, because I feel like I often ink too many and then they dry out. But things like that I find are fun, but I don't really need to like come back and reference. Like I don't need to come back and reference them, even though sometimes I will as I'm flipping back through the pages. But I find that these types of lists in the blank spaces are much more, just feel like a better use of this space for me. I have to say, I love this. I picked up this washi tape from a local stationery shop. It's an MT washi tape. And I just love the way this week came out. As I'm looking back, I tried also for the first time, I think starting this week, to like coordinate a week. So I'd use the same Tombow and same washi tape, inspired by Theory of Lauren's page. I'll also link her down below. I get so much inspiration watching her videos, and I really love her planning style. And so I was inspired to try to break up the weeks, but also like keep the deco consistent, which I think was helpful because it just made decorating the pages easier and a lot more fun, in my opinion. And then here I had 2 blank pages. Again, I just printed out some pictures and wrote a quick, like, just summary of those pictures in that day. I have a currently inked little like call out box. And then I was trying to brainstorm some planner routines and YouTube videos to film. And then we get into the following week. I also love how this turned out. I was also trying to coordinate with my weekly pages, which I thought was fun. So this is the same week as this week. I also have been wanting to include more quotes from readings I'm doing. I actually copied this quote from, I was watching Lauren from Theory of Lauren, her video on her reading journal, and this quote that she had in her reading journal really struck me. And I looked up the author afterwards and wanted to write down this quote because I feel like a lot of my why for like loving reading or certain types of reading is very much like helping me understand my life and my family's life. I study inequality, and a lot of that work is driven by like personal passion and personal experiences. So this quote just really resonated in me and I wanted to record it here. And I love, like, I want to use more of the blank spaces for stuff like this that I don't really need to reference, but is really fun to read as I flip back through this planner. And then here we're getting towards the end of January. So this is the last week of January. Here I wanted to basically have like a bit of a January recap, January reflections, and a February plan. This is again mirrored after the power sheets, which I had been using for a couple years, or I had tried to use for a couple years. I was never very good at it. I think like my brain just can't handle too many planners. Like 2 really feels like the max for me. So I like having this goal planning stuff in the Hobonichi Cousin, but I didn't have enough pages for it without getting into the February pages. And so I just used some extra, I had an extra notebook with Tomoe River paper from Good Impressions that I took out the binding and have been cutting down to tip into the Hobonichi Cousin when I need to. And so this worked out pretty well. I was able to do a quick January recap, reflect on what's going well in terms of my goals, and then made a bit of a February plan in terms of like what I wanted to prioritize and work on. Ideally, I don't know why I put the February plan before the January recap and reflection, but I did, and it's functional. I really like how this came out. And I'm enjoying the like creative sort of aspect of trying to figure out how to make a notebook work for me, getting a lot of inspiration from Siobhan at This Well-Planned Life. I love the way she really creates her own planner from scratch. And I think that like this tip-in was very much inspired by watching her video where she gets very creative with how to develop her planner in a way that works for her. And that's the end of January. We get into February. I decided to use this blank page to just have a running to-do list, the books I wanted to finish reading in February, and a list of things I needed to buy. As you might be able to tell, I had originally set this page up differently, and so instead I cut out, I had some, this is Tomoe River paper from an old Hobonichi supplement notebook that I cut down and pasted in so I could rework the page, which worked out great. And then I had originally set up some collections in the back that I was updating, but then I ended up moving or updating these in the Hobonichi Weeks because I had also set these collections up in the Hobonichi Weeks, and now I'm just using these as kind of scratch paper, which works better for me. Like for some reason, my brain just wasn't in the habit of like checking these pages back here in any type of consistent way, and so I was sort of struggling to keep them up. Which is all to say, like, this is why I'm back in the Hobonichi Weeks. And the way I'm planning to use this planner in February is to keep using the daily pages in the ways I have. So this like sort of day on one page like this, and then use the blank areas for pictures, random notes, quotes, reading notes, and things like that. And then continue using the monthly and weekly pages as memory keeping, to essentially sort of like the weekly pages, using them to document what's going on in a day-to-day basis. So it's like a bit of a rapid log. And then the monthly pages, trying to figure out how I want to use them, but I'm thinking maybe like a highlight per day or something like that could be fun. So that's the Hobonichi Cousin. And then my flip through of the Hobonichi Weeks will be very short because I did not keep it up to date for most of January. I went back and back planned some of it, but not a lot because it just didn't feel necessary. Like I had it in my Hobonichi Cousin. And so I'm not, worried that for whatever reason I'm gonna lose that information. So I've added a couple new stickers. I picked this one up. I love Schitt's Creek. It's one of my favorite shows over the last few years. And I found this at a local stationery shop in Charlottesville a couple weeks ago, and I had to pick it up. And now I'm kind of kicking myself for not buying more of them. So in terms of the pages that I'm using on a monthly basis or a regular basis in the weeks, I have my fitness tracker, which I went back and updated, and I've been using since I moved back into this a couple weeks ago. But essentially here I am using a zig dot marker to note the days that I close the rings on my Apple Watch, and then also noting the first letter of a workout I do. I've fallen off a bit in January, but I'm gonna get back on the wagon. But I really like the idea of this just being focused on exercise and physical movement. And then this is the January page in my Hobonichi weeks. And then we have the weeklies, which are pretty empty up until I move back into them at the end of, up until I move back into this planner at the end of January. So I went back in and added in some stuff, and some stuff was already there because I do use the Hobonichi weeks a lot for pre-planning, or I know pre-planning is planning, but for planning ahead, I don't like writing anything in the weekly pages of my cousin because I really like the process of setting up the weekly page in my cousin is tied to the process of my getting my head into what's ahead for me that week. So, you know, thinking about what we have to do and me planning out when I want to get certain stuff done. And so I try to keep the weekly pages in my cousin blank. And so I use this to write things down ahead of time. And that really works well for me. And then here's the last week of January when I really fully moved back into this planner as my companion to the cousin. And so I have just high level sort of notes about what's going on each day, and then my running personal to-do list, to-buy list, and then here I had a planner to do. I will often also do like a waiting on list here, just packages I'm waiting to receive. But this weekly overview really complements how I use the weeklies and dailies in the cousin well. And then in the back pages, let's see, when did I start getting back into it? Here I copied over some of the spreads I had created in the Hobonichi cousin that I felt like I wasn't referencing. So I have the 30 days of yoga. We are not doing it in 30 days. It's just like life is too busy and I'm really trying to get away from requiring perfection of myself. So if it takes us 45 days to get through the 30 days of yoga, like that's still 30 days of yoga that we did, and I'm proud that we did it. So just having more grace for us. But yeah, I copied this tracker over, and then I created a list of books I didn't finish. I thought that this would, I'm really trying to not make myself finish books I start, because that ends up leading me to like read less. And so 2 books I started in January that I didn't like, I ended up just putting them here, and I feel like I get some type of satisfaction from writing them on a list, even though they don't like count to, I'm not counting them towards the books I read in 2023. But I like the idea of having a collection like this in my books moving forward. And then here I was taking notes at a convening I was at, taking a lot of notes. Here I started taking notes on some neighborhoods we were thinking about moving to. We have to move next year. We have a 2-year lease at the house we live in now. And so we're just starting to do research and thinking about where we want to move in summer 2024. And because like daycare markets are terrible, we kind of have to make like at a high level decision pretty soon, because we have to start getting on some daycare wait list or pre-K wait list by the time we're getting ready to move, because pre-K is not free in Virginia and Maryland, although it is in DC, which is a big plus for DC because pre-K is very expensive, as is daycare. If anybody wants to hear me rant about our broken childcare system, I would be happy to. Then we went down to Charlottesville, as I mentioned. I only took this planner and then ended up just kind of writing like a summary of what we did and what was fun, which I really enjoyed. I set up a couple more trackers for stationery spending and a stationery wish list. Here we go. And then just, yeah, some other notes. And this is really why I love the Hobonichi weeks. I love having blank pages to do whatever I want with. Like I was writing down some Instagram accounts that I was really inspired by lately, and this Instagram account, Mackenzie, on paper I spelled their name wrong, so my bad. I like crossed this out so I remember what the handle is. But she had 10 things to document in February, and I loved that idea and that prompt, and I kind of edited this to be more aligned with the things I wanted to document, but it got me thinking, and I love making lists like this in my Hobonichi weeks. I had some other ideas for collections. Started writing down the books that I wanted to read this spring. And I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to figure out what's a reasonable budget for stationery each month. Like, I'm not overspending my disposable money, but like stationery spending just takes up so much of my disposable monies. Like, there are other stuff I need to buy, like more work clothes. And so something that I've been doing to try to like hone in my stationery spending is really like be reflective and write everything down that I want to buy that's like sitting in a shopping cart, thinking about it for a couple days and the cost of each one, and then figuring out like, all right, what's the total amount I want to spend, and what of these do I want to prioritize, or which of these orders do I want to prioritize right now. And so this is something new I'm trying, but like all of these things again are why I love the Hobonichi weeks. I just love having blank pages for stuff like this, and I don't have this space in the Hobonichi Cousin, or I don't feel like I have that space because I do use the daily pages most days as a daily page, which then leaves very few notes pages. And so then I feel like I'm trying to ration notes pages. I'm not writing down all the things I want to be writing down. And so this is why the Hobonichi weeks feels like a great complement to the Hobonichi Cousin, because it's smaller and more portable, but also because it has, especially the Mega, has all these notes pages that I really enjoy using. And the fact that there are so many just makes me feel really free to use them whenever I want to. Okay, so that was a chatty long video. I thought this would be shorter, but I haven't filmed a video in a couple weeks, and I've been really enjoying using my planners. And so I was really excited to share an update on sort of how I'm thinking about them, how I've been using them, and what's working. So if you have stuck with me this long, thank you again. I'm really gonna aim to start making some like shorter videos to balance out the content on my YouTube channel. But that said, again, thanks for hanging out with me for so long today. And I hope you all have a good rest of your day. Bye now.